Let's give the newcomers a little context. We traveled nearly 700 kilometers to buy a 1976 GMC Vandura motorhome. We broke down while trying to drive it home. We rescued said motorhome from the depths of despair using a towing company. We gave it some maintenance, a tune, replaced some parts, and we have it running great. We had it in for our inspection. After that, we completely scrapped the motorhome, and now we're diving back into building this 50-year-old GMC into one of the coolest flat deck haulers you've ever seen. In the last episode, we traveled to our donor vehicle where we harvested a roof panel in the pouring rain as it was. We did a rough cut removal on site, but then at home we did some fine-tuning trimming to get that fit just right. The last thing we did was spot weld in a piece of reinforced angle iron. Today we're going to get to work on installing our fully prepared roof panel. You can see with that angle iron, the reinforcement we put in there, the roof is a lot more rigid now. Look at it holding nice and straight instead of crimping and bending. And we're off. The dreaded part of this process, something that has intimidated me just thinking about it all along. We're spot welding this roof in place. So I clamped it, and you notice that I'm just tacking here. This metal, only 16 gauge, it's so light, we can only just run a series of tacks as you see here. Space them out nice and wide, then we'll clean them up and run back over them again, filling in the spaces. Despite how worried I was about this part of the project, the actual welding of the sheet metal, it went a lot smoother than I thought it was going to, and the results will speak for themselves. This was the most uncomfortable part of the welding procedure, just because there was no good way to reach in over and get that panel. It was just an awkward, difficult position. I couldn't lean on my windshield, I couldn't reach from either side, so it was just a bit of a stretch. And there's how it's looking. I'm quite proud of how this is going here, quite proud of the welds and how few holes I'm having. I'm actually not burning any holes through the steel. I am going to go ahead now, and I've just cleaned up, and with a flat wheel I've took down all the high spots on my welds. Of course we can't get it whether we can feather because we'll lose all our weld. So we have to get it so at least the high surface, there's no, you have two surfaces like this. We want our welds so they're just bridging down. We don't want any high up here, so that's what I file off. That way we can feather off the top panel down onto the low panel, and that's been working really great. I've done a couple surfaces like that already, rough, and the reason that I'm doing it in patches like that is because I only have time to do this in small increments. Like I don't have a whole day out here where I can do the whole roof at once, and I don't want my welds to be uncovered and start rusting. So what I'm doing is I'll do like I just did most of the front of that roof there. I just cleaned it up, and I have just enough time to body fill it right now. It'll dry within an hour or so. It's a nice evening, so it'll be all set up and dry before the weather turns off. That way I don't have to worry if it's a rainy day tomorrow. I won't come out and all my welds, all in around there is all rust and stuff started. No, it's going to be all covered in, so that's why I'm doing it like this. A little bit unorthodox. If I had a shop I could put it in and just keep it in out of the weather all the time. I don't know if you can see the chickens back there in the camera or not, but they're going crazy. They like getting out and running around the yard, and they're a joy to watch because they're so wild. But yeah, if I had a shop I could keep this indoors, I obviously wouldn't do any body filling until I could do all my body filling. But I don't have that luxury. I'm sure old Mr. Wingfield will have something to say about our methods here. See how we're going to feather there into the original roof? Pushing our polybond back into the welds so we get a good hold there. Oh, really happy with that. So excited by how this roof is going on, guys. I don't know how some of you might be shaking your heads and thinking it's terrible, but I'm really happy it's going really nice and smooth by my standards. The work is coming out good, the joins are coming out good, the stuff that I had theorized in my head is playing out right. So we did run into a problem right here that I'll address. That'll be the biggest obstacle. When we pulled the crown of that roof, welded that straight edge, that allowed the roof to sit up flatter in the front, so it drawed up. So we have both full sides sitting nice all the way along the front, and I chose to run the bow out here. I could have ran it out in the middle here, but that would have been, this is a lot harder to work up here because of where I'm standing. It's very uncomfortable. So I chose to bring it out on the corner. We'll put a couple relief cuts, let the roof sit down. We'll backfill. It'll have to be filled up the roof a little ways, and I'm confident that I can get it to look really good there. And so, not at all worried about that. You calling it a night already, girls? Calling it a night already? Yeah. Now that I've made those cuts in the bulged part of the roof, I can start overlapping those panels, bringing them down to where they need to be, to where the edges are contacting the original roof, and tacking them in place. And this went surprisingly well. I continue to indicate my surprise here, and it's not because I don't have faith in my skills or my efforts. It comes down to hoping for the best, expecting the worst. You know, these are all theories, plans that I have come up with in my mind, where I think they'll work, and then it's always a pleasant surprise when they do, when I try it in practice. Body work like this is largely a new game for me. I haven't really done any of it before, and honestly, I'll be completely honest here, I'm not watching any content on how to do body work. I have done zero research. I just like to push myself and challenge and think for myself. I want to come up with my own ideas, even if that means rewriting a book that does not need to be written. I'm just really enjoying this process. Where I cut the slits in the roof and the roof overlapped a little, we were left with quite a crown there. When I pounded that out, we were left with a hole. $250. 2.5-inch wire framing nails happen to be great because they're such a low carbon content steel. They're not brittle. You can tack them and weld them like this and they don't break and chip and pluck off. They're a very soft, malleable metal. In retrospect now, after coming up with this little tool creation here, a little dent puller, my slide hammer, I would have done a hook on the end, kind of like a hammer claw, instead of the C-clamp, which was a little bit difficult to attach to the nails. Worked really great, but it was just a little bit challenging to get them on. Like magic. And our results. We moved that overlapping bulge up in the right in the corner of the roof there. I've knocked down the real high spots. I've pulled up the low spots, rough ground it with a flat wheel. We have a pretty good setup. Now we're going to go ahead, just like we have been all along, and body fill it right away. We've got to get that covered in before our welds end up getting any moisture on them. And our rough body fill applied. Depending on how much hardener you have added, this sets up really quick. I've put the body fill right down to the gullies, to the eaves trough sort of there, and I'm just really happy with how it's turning out. Using my random orbital sander here now, some real coarse 40 grit pads just to eat down the tall highs and the roughness. I could have done a little smoother job applying it, but I just made sure I had plenty on there. And here's what we have right now. You can see we're to the metal in some spots. We have some high spots filled in. Just really nice. I'm really happy with the work that we got done here today. And here's why we body filled it. It's because we want to go ahead, seal it in with some primer right away. So I've just got some cheap primer there. Wiped everything down with a degreaser. Well, we'll get that primer on. That'll seal everything in from the rain, cover it in, and protect it for the weeks or months or however long it takes us to get to an actual paint job, in which case we'll give this another sand, a final prep sand, and prime it properly and get our paint on there. Have a look at this roof. How exciting is that? I'm just really proud looking at that in the driveway. We officially have our seats out of the rain.